Wonderful to see so many familiar faces. I will vamp for a little bit as more people come in. But my name is Alex Goodman. You may know me as the president of North County Philanthropy Council. This is my term for 2022. I think I saw a handful of you folk last night at Coastal Roots Farms, where we had our first in-person mixer in 2 years. So that was our moment to send off Sandra, who is moving on to the East Coast for our next adventure. But Sandra will do a little bit of housekeeping and get some things going before we hand off to Carlos, who will present our speakers in the program for today. But everybody, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Welcome, everyone. Actually, Alex, I'm just going to kick us off with a few comments. So welcome, friends, for those of you who are new to NCPC, or perhaps this might be your first program. Glad you can join us. NCPC connects nonprofits, corporate partners, foundation partners, and individuals together to strengthen philanthropic impact in our community, and while fostering a just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive community, starting with ourselves. So we provide educational programs, celebrate the amazing people and organizations who are making a difference at our annual Volunteer Award celebration in November, and our latest offering is Mentoring 2.0. So please be aware that as a member, all of your staff and volunteers receive all member benefits too. So we encourage and invite you to visit our website and follow us on social media to connect with us, learn what we're doing, and see how you can get involved. So I'm going to start today with just a brief run of show of what you can expect for today's program, and then I'll hand things over to our gracious speakers, Adriana O'Donnell, Director of Philanthropy at San Ysidro Health, and Tamika Franklin, Senior Director of Southern California Major Gifts at UC Berkeley. So we encourage you to drop any questions that emerge in the chat. I will be compiling them, and then towards the end, we'll have a Q&A section, and I'll share them with our speakers, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss those as a group. So, and then finally, we'll hear from Sandra Alston, Managing Director at NCPC, and I will shout that from the rooftop for as long as I can continue to say that, who will provide some closing remarks for us. So to start, why should nonprofits focus on individuals? You might be thinking, how much time do you spend in donor identification, stewardship, leveling up gifts, and building relationships? And the reason is because based on your actions, individuals have the potential to move up the donor pyramid, to feel like a partner, and to give more. And a vibrant and diverse individual donor stewardship strategy only has the potential to strengthen your organization. And so as we get into today's program, we like to start with a brief poll. And my friend Sandra's going to pop that poll up for us just to get a feel for the crowd. We just want to know, are you comfortable experiencing cultivating, soliciting, and stewarding individual donors? By all means, be honest, because this will just kind of give us an opportunity to get a feel for the group, see how folks are feeling, and really tailor the message for what folks' needs are. All right, thank you for sharing the data, Sandra. It's really helpful. And I would like to start just with the question for our speakers. What is a favorite way that you have been recognized as an individual donor?
Great. Thank you so much, Carlos, for welcoming us to today's program. I know Adriana and I are really excited to be here and just, share a little bit about what our day-to-day looks like, how we are thinking about philanthropy in our respective organizations, and honestly just have a friendly conversation. I think this is a little bit of an insight into how we talk to each other. So we're happy to, be able to share that with you all. In terms of, how I like to be stewarded, I think anything personal is really impactful. And if I can see that, the funding that I'm providing or the volunteer experience that I'm providing is, reaping the benefits somewhere along the line, connections with students, hearing those stories directly from them or through leadership, that's always important to me. but it really is more about the impact than anything else. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is making a difference and is really reaching those who absolutely need that support. And that inspires me to continue giving or continue thinking about what more I can do, how much more I can open up doors, or what else I can personally do to help. Adriana, what are you thinking?
Well, first, thank you for having us. I'm so honored, especially since it's Sandra's last actual webinar. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Sandra for all of her hard work. So, as far as how I like to be stewarded, it really is about impact, Tamika, exactly what you just said, but also recognizing that, a phone call can't always be the case, especially with small shops. So if I get an e-newsletter that shows me what our collective donations are giving, and making it tailored to a specific, family or a specific, story, that really makes an impact for me. It makes me feel special, like I contributed to that organization's mission and ultimately bettering that community or whatever it may be. I'm also a big fan of, animal charities. So if I get a picture of a puppy or a cat, you sold me. I'm gonna continue to give, but being able to share the impact of that donation is very, very special. And I can tell you that a lot of donors that I have been able to communicate with, especially with COVID-19 pandemic, and recognizing that things aren't the way they used to be, getting that information is special.
Absolutely. Yeah, and animals, all the feels, always, all the feels. Before we move on, I just want to make sure that, I know that the room's getting a little bit bigger. If you want to put it on speaker view so you can see, Adriana and I as we're talking, that might be help with figuring out the boxes on your screen. Just a suggestion, but I thought I'd put that out there. So, back to this discussion, you mentioned COVID, Adriana, and I know we're all kind of rethinking what stewardship touches mean and how we can be impactful. And, everyone's kind of overrun with emails at this point. So everyone's trying to think outside the box. What penetrates, what gets through so that you actually see it and feel it and it's personal and tailored. What is that looking like for you in this environment?
That is such a great question. So I know that the term post-pandemic fundraising has been thrown out there, but is it really post-pandemic?
I don't think so.
Right. And then I'm also thinking about the words seasoned and experienced. I can tell you that not a single person, as much as you are seasoned, 20 plus years, we've never gone through a pandemic ourselves, or all of these things that are happening all at once. Social injustice, war, it is such a difficult time. So if we're feeling it, our donors are feeling it too. So recognizing that, and one of the things that I can honestly tell you, being frontline, fundraiser for my organization, an organization that was greatly impacted by COVID-19, just geographics, being along the border. We're countywide, but the core of our organization's services are here along the border. It's been, the takeaway is being flexible, being able to share exactly what we're doing in real time. That has probably been the best thing that we could have done, and really using technology, because we couldn't make the phone calls or schedule the Zooms or have any type of in-person events. So using technology, utilizing our frontline staff to share with us the different ways that we've impacted a specific family, or even our providers and our frontline staff, that went a long way for us. So not post-pandemic, definitely still here. We're still wearing our masks in clinic, even though, you know, in the outside world, you know, some things have been relaxed a bit. And it's flexibility as well. I can tell you that our development plan that was developed last year no longer stands. I'm not sure how many of you are feeling the same way, but I revisited our development plan 5 times. And finally I said, you know what? Let's be flexible. And we're not going to have our traditional gala where we cultivate the majority of our individual donors. It's a true like fundraising. So what can we do in lieu of that? Smaller events, more intimate, and really relying on our you know, executives and all of the different parts of our organizations to help us reach our individual donors. So I know I went a long way there, Tamara, but there's so much to share.
Yeah, but there's a lot in there that I think I recognize, you know, when I was at the Proy School, you know, for most of you who don't know me, I'm pretty new to UC Berkeley. I'm still based in San Diego, but I'm about 6 months in. So my experience of the pandemic really was working with the Proy School, UC San Diego, and seeing that shift happen with delivering education to students who really don't have access to Wi-Fi, to computers. You know, they're in homes where, you know, finding a small space where you can even just try to focus in on work, that's just not the priority for that family, or is a possibility for that family. A lot of our students used to do their homework at library because that's where you could get focused work done. And then they all went home and libraries weren't available, and we had to figure out a way to shift the supports for them. So what our original plans were in terms of, you know, rethinking the quality of education for students who are usually underserved in Southeast San Diego, who usually get overlooked in our system. It went from, let's make sure you have the best access to the arts program on campus, to let's just make sure you have a laptop in front of you so you can work. And that is kind of informed, at least until I left, it really informed what the new development plan was starting to look like. The strategic plan with the new leadership was coming in and thinking really big. It really kind of went down to, you know, what are the basic necessities that every student needs if we have to continue in a virtual or remote environment. We want to make sure that that education is being delivered appropriately. They shouldn't have a drop off in that. What are the issues that we're seeing? How can we address that at the level at where they are? We served 42 zip codes. So that's not something that can be scalable in one area and everything's going to be fine. That is countywide, as many students as you can think of. So yeah, I feel that, you know, there was a really deep kind of knowledge of, let's go back to what we do well and make sure that we are doing it as well as we can, given the constraints that we're under, and going forward with development, making sure that we're really supporting those things and they are funded appropriately before we start going, okay, 2.0 looks like X. They are going back to the gala model. In fact, that is tomorrow. So I'm curious, you know, I have a lot of friends who are still there. I'm still very close with the leadership, and I'm really curious to see how that works out for them. But it sounds like they've sold out, and I'm really happy to hear that because the school needs the support. And I think the community wanted to come back in and get involved and see each other. And, you know, there's so many people who support it, that to have a place where you can be together and see the leadership, which I think for this event, it's the first time they're going to be in front of it, you know, everyone sharing what they're thinking about the school, how we've evolved, what the students are thinking, you know, all of that is going to be very new and very exciting. So I'm really, really excited to see what they do tomorrow. I'll get the digested version, but, you know, I hope that I can, you know, claim a little part of, you know, where they are today. But, you know, you mentioned flexibility, Adriana, and I think that's really important, not just internally as we think about who we are as fundraisers, who we are as ambassadors for philanthropy and volunteerism, but where our donors are. And, you know, the very real challenges that we're facing where, you know, the home became the office and this classroom, and, you know, you're trying to balance maybe managing a team with keeping deliverables going and just your mental health and everything else that went on in the society together. Then to have the ask on top of that and try to figure out where that fits as you're maybe readjusting what your priorities are. There's a lot of change that we've all had to live through. I know we've, you know, a lot of us have gone through that as well. And I keep coming back to, how do we extend grace to ourselves, and how do we extend grace to our donors and our prospects, and maybe extend that cycle a little bit longer than, maybe the 2-month formula that we think we're using, or the 2-year formula, whatever that looks like for your organization or your donor cycle. How do we bring in a little bit more of that nuance into the conversation so that, we can be respectful of people's time and where they are, but also be, how do I say, we want to make sure that we're actually managing expectations internally. We all have goals and, financial models that we have to fill in. And, there's sometimes there are salary lines attached to that. Sometimes there are programs that need to be moving forward on that. And they just don't work on our timetable. So how do we, I know I've had conversations with our leadership on how we manage expectations with gifts that we thought were going to really make the year. And that's going to get pushed out a little bit longer because the donor is not ready. How have you navigated those conversations? I know they're not the easiest ones, but how have you found those to be, received?
Absolutely. So I do have to say that managing expectations and flexibility have been the two things that we've been focused on in 2022. For us, we did have to postpone our gala. And for us, it was really difficult because it was a gala that in 2019 raised almost $1 million.
Yeah.
Very successful. So how do you make that up? And realizing that the philanthropy team is not the only team responsible for that, revenue line item. So donor engagement events have to look different. They're not called that anymore for us. We've now looked at having open houses, smaller, having ribbon cuttings, because although the pandemic has restricted many things, one thing that it hasn't is the growth of the organization. So we still have to showcase it and do it in a way that is sensitive to the times. So again, if there's takeaways here as far as what pandemic fundraising is and everything else that goes along with that package, is that I am utilizing my board members. And for San Isidro Health, that looks a little different. We actually have a philanthropy leadership council who helps us with our fundraising. Utilizing our volunteers, our frontline staff, our advocates to help introduce us to new donors, ones that have the linkage, that have the interest in what we do, in our mission, and also in the different areas that we are in San Diego County. I'm also really taking a look at our donor database. Who's there? Who have we missed? Who's considered a lapsed donor? And have we made any efforts to reach out to them directly? Why are they lapsed? So carving out time in your day to be able to reach out, but being very intentional about it. And then once those phone calls or that email, however that person wants to connect with you, really taking the time to listen. I don't go in with an agenda. In fact, one of my mentors told me a very long time ago, so yeah, I've been around for about 20 years, give or take. But she mentioned something to me that I will never forget. She says she never goes to a donor meeting with a proposal ready. She goes there to listen and to understand why our organization over all of the other incredible organizations out there. And then she goes back to the office and tailors a proposal specific to that donor, so that it really resonates with their why. And I've taken that with me, even in this day and age that has been gold. So that's what we're doing. So lapsed donors, making sure that our stories are transparent, that DEI is also part or actually for NCPC, it's Jedi, which I love that term, by the way. Whoever coined it, gold.
Yeah.
So, and for us, that means our language. How are we talking about the people that we serve? The reason why we exist. They are not marginalized. They are not needy, poor. No, they are going through a circumstance and we are helping to lift them up. So never would I label them that way. So going through all of documentation to ensure that our language is consistent with our JEDI or DEI or DEIB, plan for the year. So this is how we are making the changes within our approach to individual donors. And they're so important. As you know, we all saw the Giving USA annual report, and it still holds true. 69% of all funding came from individuals. So we should never forget that, because while funding can go up and down and all around as far as foundations and corporate support, individuals, they feel you, they feel your mission. So you have to nurture it.
Absolutely, and be authentic with that too. Gosh, you give me a lot there that I think we can kind of segue into the future, but I wanted to address Alex's comment in the chat, about whether we're managing expectations internally and externally. For me, it was both, and it still is both. So similar to when we shifted to away from this in-person gala, which was slated for April 2020 at the preschool. Invitations went out and then the campus closed down. So we had to shift really fast. And we didn't have an event that, which was online. We didn't have an event that people could really rally around and support until September. It took us that long, because we needed the internal processes in place to be able to talk to the foundation and have some kind of mechanism in place to take those online gifts. We need to figure out what kind of programming would be interesting and exciting. We weren't sure how many of the students we'd be able to engage. That's always a critical component of it. They don't necessarily want to see us. They want to see the students and really see what it's like. So figuring out all of those pieces and getting the buy-in, it took us a few months to get a plan together and say, all right, this is where we're going. And managing the expectations of our board members who were very much ready to say, okay, here is our $25,000 gift, but we want to do this where we can be seen. It was a shift for them to have to delay that, or maybe even make 2 gifts to be able to make up the full. And so it was explaining and bringing them along on the journey so that they could actually see what it was like as a student. And for some of them, it was actually bringing a student to our board meetings to say, this is what it's really like right now. Here's the circumstance in which I'm living in. We prep the student, of course, but we also chose students who wanted to tell that story, were comfortable telling that story, and I think it's really important that we empower. But we needed them to hear that and see that from the who I call the clients that we're supporting. Our students are our clients, and then hear what the overlay of administration was with that. So explaining it there, and then explaining to our leadership that as much as this is my primary task as a fundraiser, I was still employed by UC San Diego, and that meant we're all shifting in and doing kind of the top 3 things that the university is doing. So I'm doing that plus doing CROIS. And, it's all hands on deck. We're all rolling up our sleeves and we're all getting things done. So managing the expectations there, that, Chancellor says X, we're going there. Y will happen after, but these are things that we absolutely have to do to keep the campus afloat or to make sure that students are getting the deliverables that they need. And that means our students too, but it's going to be a broader approach as opposed to the very specific approach that you're used to. Explaining that to our new leadership, we're not used to that overlay. That was interesting. So we're managing it internally and externally. And I still think we're doing that. A lot of people are still kind of, we hear post-pandemic talked about a lot, and we're not post-pandemic. We're evolving into something, and we're not quite sure what the something is. So our plans are going to change, and our ideas are going to change, and we want you to be on a journey with us, but it is going to be a evolving process that we hope you will be on that journey with us with. I hope that answers the question. If you do have any other, follow-up, thank you. So yeah, back to this. I think you touched into the EDI, the JEDI piece as well, and Adriana, and that's a really key piece for me personally as a fundraiser. That we're having these conversations and we're staying true to the values of our mission, of our organizations. That everyone buys into that. I think just like philanthropy, JEDI is a responsibility of everybody who's employed by the institution. It's not just the DEI officer, or it's not segmented. Everyone has to buy into these values and say, this is how we're going to approach it, and here are the ways that we're seeing that. And I think we're in this space now where we're talking to a lot of our donors about where our lines are, and there's more comfort, or at least more support for us, for at least I think on the development side, to say, this no longer fits with who we are. Here's why. We want to, we want to use this as a teachable moment. We want to hear your perspective, but we really need you to understand where we're going and why we want you here with us. But if it's not aligned, it's not aligned. I know I've had some of those conversations with donors. Sometimes they walk away. Sometimes they're willing, they say, you know what, okay, we're going to hold back, but let's keep talking. Let's keep figuring this out. I want to understand. I want to get there. And I want to make sure that this is not going to come at a issue with us kind of, it's not going to come at a, great disservice to you. And I found those really inspiring. So I'm really excited to continue those conversations. Maybe even changing gift policies so that they fit in line with that. I know a lot of institutions, especially in academia, are dealing with that. Gifts that have been accepted and then naming rights that are being pulled down. We're definitely dealing with that at Berkeley in a large way. But what does that look like for you?
Well, I feel empowered by it, that it isn't just an acronym that we're throwing around, that it is being woven into our presentations, into our language, as I mentioned earlier. And I'll tell you, it's not a 5-step, a 3-step, in 6 months, we're going to fix this. This is an ongoing exercise, an ongoing education, not only for philanthropy, but throughout the organization. So for me, it's empowering. And I have had those conversations, Tamika, just like you mentioned. And those conversations were around how we address the people that we serve, and even having to navigate conversations with potential donors about who we serve. And because the truth is, we serve everyone regardless of ability to pay or status. If you are people, we are going to serve you. And that has been our mission for over 50 years. And what's empowering is saying, this is our mission. If you are aligned with our mission, we want to take you on this journey. We want to partner with you. Not that we need to, shrink ourselves or redefine a program to meet a donor's expectation. I feel like many nonprofits are going through this as well. I've heard it throughout, just amongst our colleagues. So my takeaway as far as JEDI is concerned is, 1, have grace. We've said it before, we'll say it again. Have grace with yourself, but also have grace for your donor. Many of them are learning too. JEDI, DEI, it's new to them. So having grace is just part of like the whole emotional intelligence and being able to connect. So that's one thing. And the other part of having grace too is everybody has bad days. I've come to the conclusion that it's okay to reschedule that, phone call, okay to reschedule that Zoom call, okay to reschedule that coffee. And it's okay for me and it's okay for that donor. And that's gone such a long way. In fact, I've been thanked for that, because they're people too, and they have kids and dogs and mortgages, the whole 9 yards. So being able to connect at that level, wow, it's really made a difference. And then the other is that, I talked about empowerment. As a philanthropy professional, a fundraiser, I am an expert in what my organization does. I can speak to the mission and I can speak to the programs because I see it in action every single day. And being able to say, no, so simply, no, this does not serve our mission, our population, and steering that donor perhaps to a different organization that does. That's okay too. Again, it's that authenticity, it's that transparency. I know that in one of the, in the chat, Tish Marine Military Academy asked, what does personalized presentation means? I feel like this is part of that. So knowing your mission, back and forth, left and right, and ensuring that your board, your volunteers, everyone that advocates for your organization knows it, and you're speaking the same language is key. But also being able to say personally what your passion is for your mission and how you're aligned with that. That's something that, you can't fake that. And it resonates so much. So a personalized presentation is who you are and the research that you've done for that individual donor and tailoring it. So I can tell you right now, my mission is to contribute to a world where everyone has access to quality healthcare and choice. And that is exactly what I'm doing every single day, and I feel it in my bones. So that's what you're going to hear when you talk to me.
Gosh, what you remind me of when you say that, we are always trying to donor-centric, and we should be, if we're asking, donors and to commit to us, especially philanthropically, we don't give anything back except like a really feel-good experience. We're not selling you a product. You don't take something with you outside of that emotion. Then it's really important that we focus on that. And there is a difference between kind of giving away everything while selling your values and missions versus like bringing somebody on board with that. So I think those two things are, especially recently in the last 2 years for me, they're not at odds, but I've been taking that a lot more to heart and having bigger questions about and conversations about, how this fits in and why this is. The other thing that we do as fundraisers, we are connectors and we are advocates. We do work for the organizations that pay us, but we support philanthropy writ large. And I really do take it seriously when there were opportunities where it didn't quite work for Preuss. Here's another organization that's doing exactly what you're trying to do. We just can't do it because of either our structure or the way that we're positioned in the university or, fill in the gap. But there's somewhere you can make that impact and then get to the students who are absolutely going to need your support. Here's where you can do it and here's how. And I think that's just as important a role because philanthropy, there's enough to share. We should be working together with each other. And, I think that karma, putting that out there does net you, returns in the end. You want to be partners with your colleagues, and we're all colleagues in this room. And it's important that we remember that. The point to grace, though, and just how do we take care of ourselves and take care of our donors? And I always think of how people are trying to find themselves in that allyship and define it for themselves and how they can be supportive while they're learning and coming along on that journey. And I always think that people are coming to that conversation with the best of intentions. And it's our job to see that and then say, okay, here's how we can help you, or here are the resources you may want to check out, or here's somebody else who you might be able to hear this from, and it's absorbed. And sometimes the messenger changes everything. And I love that we're in a space that we can talk about that now, and it's open and it's free, and people are willing to be vulnerable. part of building that trust is being able to be vulnerable, both ways. So that's really exciting for me. I'm super excited about what our industry is doing and how we're able to, have those conversations around support and making the world better, which I think is why we're all here.
Right. And going back to partnerships, I feel that since 2020, there has been more opportunity for partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to bring one example up, a tangible example of partnerships in our region that are really going strong and are helping so much of our county's nonprofits. So at the very, I believe it was the end of 2020, San Diego Gives came together. 12 nonprofit organizations banded together and used a model from Colorado, I believe. They raised like ridiculous amount of money in one day, like $40 million. And so why not San Diego? We have this diverse community and we have this rich nonprofit community. Why can't we lift each other up and really partner together to share how we make San Diego better? And so San Diego Gives was born. And for all of you that may not know, it is a campaign to encourage supporters to give local. And it highlights different missions within San Diego County, from North County to East County, South County, the whole 9 yards. And we banded together to be able to share resources. So 5 things, I'll tell you 5 things about it. One is that collectively we're able to purchase an expensive platform so that all organizations, whether large or small, has access to digital philanthropy, which is a great way to encourage support, especially from new donors who may not have heard from you. Second, you get PR, already part of that agreement. So when San Diego Gives is mentioned, so is your organization based on your mission. Third, you get to talk with your colleagues. And if there is a takeaway there, is that, again, no matter how seasoned you are, haven't gone through a pandemic, and you probably don't have, there's no book for this. So you really rely on your network. And you talk about your experiences and maybe craft your own campaign based on that. And that's what's happened for me. So again, you establish your network, and I've established partnerships with the organizations that are part of San Diego Gives, so that I know we can't do it alone. I know we can't do it all. So why not partner and also, go for funding together as well? It's mutually beneficial, and we've never had this conversation before. So it's super exciting. So I feel like really looking at what's out there and how to connect and partner with organizations that can complement your mission is gold. And it's another way to get in front of donors that may be aligned with your mission, and in a very, with very small expense attached to it. Because we all know acquisition is very expensive, so why not?
Absolutely, especially if you're a smaller shop that doesn't have the resources for, prospect development, prospect research. And, I'm pretty fortunate. I've always worked in an academic institution, a large one at that. And so we're always well resourced to be able to build out our database, keep it as current as possible. But I imagine that that is an expense that I haven't even had to think about. So I'm pretty fortunate in that respect. And, the opportunity to, especially if you don't have a built-in audience as your your donor base, to be able to extend yourself out to the community and, to say, hey, here's who we are, here's what it looks like. That's, I think, gold. The expense of a product to be able to manage the finance part piece of this also is, I think, critical. And so I'm like a big fan of San Diego Gives, and Adriana, I know you played a big role in keeping that going in our city. So thank you for that. It's game changing. It really is. Jeannie mentioned something that I think is really key to, when you get back to this personal piece of, understanding who your donors are, who your prospects are, how they want to be communicated to, who they want to be, why they're passionate about the causes that they choose, whether you fit into that or not. I think all of those things are really important when you step into a room with a donor, especially if it's the first time you're meeting with them. I got similar advice when I started my, career. Don't know so much that you are bored in the meeting. And it seems simple enough, but think about all of these briefing packets that you kind of create, and all the research that you do to go into something. When you sit in a room and you're asking questions that you already know the answers to, it's very easy to get disengaged. And so for me, it's if it doesn't fit on like half a page, then I don't need it. And I've always run with that. That is enough information for me to say, okay, these are the 5 lingering questions that I think are out there. Here's how I can tie it back to the organization that I'm working with. And then maybe I'll learn something new. Maybe it's not the 5 things I was thinking about. It's the 6th thing that I never even considered. And that's going to spin us off in a whole other direction. And I want to leave space for that. So I think it's really important to, be listening and actively listening so that you can pick up on those cues and build out something that is personal for the folks that you're working with. Carlos, I want to jump into you. Do we have any, how's the chat looking?
Chat's looking great, and I applaud you both for taking care of the questions. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more from you, and also just thinking about, I know when you were talking about working collaboratively, I also want to highlight the work of Fundraising Fridays, and I just really appreciate the community coming together and the support that's provided there as a forum for folks to just brainstorm and figure things out. And so thinking about the fundraisers in this role and what things might be helpful for them to consider and to be successful, I'd like to hear from both of you.
Well, Alex also put in the chat, like beyond mission, vision, values, and programs, what would you say the essential elements that an organization can prepare today to be successful with individual donors tomorrow? I'm going to go back to language and how your organization is viewed in the community. And you have to take into account everything. Your website, really taking into account the collateral material. Does it come through one office, or does everybody make their things piecemeal? If so, does it look like it's coming from the same organization, and how's the language? It may seem like, that's a no-brainer, but I feel like we're going 100 miles per hour, and sometimes that check isn't there. So I feel like organizations can really benefit from that. And also making sure that from your CEO all the way down to, the employee that just joined your organization and maybe in reception or in your call center, that they understand the mission and understand that your organization's a 501c3 and that you are accepting donations. And this is the department that needs to be handling that. That actually happened to us. We thought everyone knew. They didn't. So mind blown. And sure, going back and ensuring that our messaging, even internally, is what it should be to be able to guide potential donors to us, to philanthropy, so that we can steward them, cultivate them, steward them, the whole 9 yards. And another thing that I have to say is, to Jeannie's point about listening, absolutely 100% true. And not only is that true for individuals, I feel like that is probably the key part in retaining your donors. Just like you would retain a friendship or a relationship, but that's the same thing. So I just feel like we as fundraisers, as philanthropy professionals, should be superior listeners, superior, PhD level, so that we really, can tailor the conversation to our donors, and just letting them know that we care. That's authentic to me. That's what a real relationship is behind, and that's why we're here. So
100%. I do, I agree with that. And, just making sure that your language is reflective of who you are, where you want to be, where you are going, that it is clear that everyone is on the same page with that. I think strategic plans get a bad rep because they feel top down sometimes, but I think a really good strategic plan, when it's done well, includes as many stakeholders as possible so that it can really reflect what the organization is about and where it's headed. So I would say, engage in a really solid strategic planning process, and make sure that, that we're talking about communication and language and, reputation out in the community, in line with that, looking at the board and making sure it does reflect who it needs to be. Does this need to be a board of access that can open doors for philanthropy? Or do you have voices in the room who are actually affected by the programs that you're serving? Who's in and who's out. Those are active conversations I think we're all having now and should. And then the other piece is philanthropy, like EDI, and I think most of us here understand this. There is no money tree that we shake and it just kind of falls out. We have a lot of work to do, and having an understanding of what it takes to be able to day in, day out, go in, talk to people, get them on board with that. In some cases, be a marketer, in some cases, being a therapist. But the toll that takes on us as fundraisers is a big one, and I think underappreciated. And I think we're seeing that now in the industry where, we are asking for what we think we are worth. And, there's a lot of positions out there and not a lot of organizations that are ready to support our work and us as individuals. Like, anyone can jump into fundraising at this point, but the caliber that you're going to get is very different. And I think that's just as important when you're thinking about your organization. Who is representing it out there and can build trust and have these authentic conversations and really reflect who you are, come back in, manage up in some cases, because there is some change making that has to happen in that level as well, while keeping things moving forward. I think, NCPC is a really good space where we can have those conversations. I know you're all here to connect with each other. I think that's one place where we can have those conversations and share practices on, how we're moving it forward. But those are very real issues that we're all dealing with as well. And so I think in line with the language, it's who's delivering that language and how are we presenting ourselves out there, and are we staffed appropriately to do the things we think we want to do?
Yeah, and another thing, as I'm monitoring the chat, body language, yes, but I'll tell you what, it was so difficult to really understand that in a Zoom call. I mean, and so there was a comment in the chat that said, we went back to basics, and that's so true. When I started picking up the phone and just making a simple phone call, not FaceTime, not Zoom, but a simple phone call, that was appreciated. Yeah, I want to talk to you. I want to hear another person on the line without having to, set up my room so you don't see, my background, or something as simple as that. So yes, I absolutely think that we went back to basics, and that's a good thing. I do think so, because sometimes, I don't know about you, I'm only going to speak about my experiences, but sometimes we complicate ourselves, and that could go towards language again, how we speak about giving to our organizations is another thing that I feel like sometimes we complicate. And so I feel like we really benefited in the last 2 years from going back to basics, and also going back to who the base and why are they there. So if you haven't had the opportunity to go back into your database, if there's one takeaway from today, is that you do that. You take a look and see. And also take a look at history. How long have they been with you? There's a reason. Call them, ask them, thank them. I can guarantee you that that conversation is going to be fruitful for you.
I do recall that too. When the first early days of the pandemic, when we're all just trying to figure out what's next, how do we move forward, and the easiest thing that I was able to do was just do the "Hi, how are you" call, and it was a phone call because I wasn't even ready to jump on Zoom yet. I just didn't. I wasn't ready to be seen yet personally, and I thought maybe there are donors who are out there who are feeling the same too. We're all a little nervous. Things are kind of hectic. We're got makeshift desks everywhere, and but it's okay. It's nice to just hear people, see people who want to connect with you and did they just care. And I took philanthropy off the table for the first, I'd say, 2 months. Unless that donor brought it up, this was just a check-in. I wanted to make sure you were okay. How are you faring? What are your fears? What are your worries? How's your family doing? If we had that close connection. And I found that there were people who were ready for that conversation and more open because they had the time. They weren't running from one thing to the next. They were sitting in one place and they had the time. And then there were people who were just super isolated who were happy to just be connected with somebody. And we got some gifts that came through that as well too. I think that was really cool. I do like the idea of board members making some of those calls. I think you want to make sure that they're ready for that, that you script them. Some board members are great at that and some board members are not. So take a look and see what your skill sets are and find out who is ready for that, who wants to be there. I have board members I bring on calls with me now. They're great in the room, and there are others who are not great in the room, but they're great on a phone call. And so be honest about what that is and ask them what they need. Make sure that they feel comfortable in the space. You want to set them up for success. You want to make sure that first one is a positive experience so they'll be willing to do it again. And maybe start with people they know. That would always be a good place to start.
Yeah, and for me, our board members are elderly, so we want to make sure that we're, that they're comfortable, and some of them may not be comfortable with Zoom. So what I've done is I'm actually inviting our program managers and people that are frontline so that they can speak to the services. I think that being able to give from a first person perspective really makes a difference. So that's helped. I know Tish Marine Military Academy says now that traveling is an option again, do you recommend going to see donors in person? Tamika, have you been doing in-person travel?
Yeah, we are out there meeting people. I've been up and down, Southern California doing in-person travel. There's still some folks that I've met with who are very uncomfortable going out of their home, but they'll be fine with, people that they know coming into the home. I've not had anyone ask me to do a test to come into their homes, but they have asked me to be masked. I'm happy to do that. So yeah, that's a very specific, situation. I do ask and I do fall back on Berkeley policy. This is how we are conducting ourselves. Those rules govern even if you're outside of campus. How comfortable are you? And I let them tell me what they need. That's also really important because I staff leadership from campus. So I want to make sure that they're prepared ahead of time walking into a room so that we can just jump into the conversation and not necessarily have to kind of go through the logistical steps of, okay, do the test here. All right, we got this back, and then, move forward. But I do leave it to the donor to let us know, what they're comfortable with. But, most of my older donors, they don't want to meet in person. A lot of donors who have children who are not eligible for the vaccine, not comfortable with meeting as well. So I say ask, always ask. Adriana, do you have anything else to add of that before we wrap up?
I just take the cue from the donor. If they'd like to meet with me in person, what's comfortable for them. And I, again, leaving the ball in their court and just, that's basically my 2 cents about it. It's gone well, and I'm so happy to see people in person again. So
yeah, I've missed that a lot too. But now we have a whole new arsenal with hybrid meetings, and I think outreach has been even longer. So I'm excited to see what we can do keeping both of those in play.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that wraps up our conversation today. I'm so grateful to all of you for sharing this space with us and asking great questions and getting us thinking about how we're doing our jobs and how we can support each other. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. And I'm going to pass it back to Carlos to wrap things up.
Actually, I have the pleasure and privilege of passing it over to Sandra, who can close us out with some remarks today.
Great. Thanks, Carlos. Tag. Oh my goodness, what a amazing final presentation to be a part of. Thank you so much, Adriana and Tamika. You are both such pros, but also in true NCPC spirit. Look, I'm like stumbling a little bit, you guys. Just so warm and inviting, and just, I've only known both of you for such a short time, but it's just been such an honor. And I know we will continue our relationship, and just really, really appreciate you both being here. For all of our NCPC guests, whether you're current members or looking to be members, or just want to come on from time to time. Last night here, I'm going to share a quick little photo. We had such an amazing connector at Costa Roots Farm. And how often do you get to be on stage with all of your past bosses? These are all the past presidents that I've had the pleasure of my past 10 years working with, including we added Sharon Goodson, because she, with Fundraising Fridays, is definitely such an amazing part of our NCPC team right now. So thank you all for being there. It was really funny. Someone was saying, oh, she tells me I'm her favorite. No, I'm her favorite. And you know what? You're all my favorite, because like the true joy that I receive watching you connect, whether it's been in person over the past 10 years or on Zoom or at our volunteer manager connectors, or just those connections, watching it happen and blossom. You are all incredible, and I'm just so honored to have been a part of it. So thank you so much. And I do want to end with a special thank you to Tamika. You are such a pro, because if you have not heard, UC Berkeley is on an all-campus lockdown right now. And Tamika has been working with that while she's been doing this presentation. So Tamika, you're amazing, and special prayers for all of our friends at Berkeley right now.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
And yeah, I have goosebumps for a lot of reasons. So thank you all. And thank you for all the dogs that are here too. So fun. And that's all we have. Feel free to stay on for a few minutes. Alex, you're good? Thank you. And yes, there was a question. We will be sharing the recording of this with you, along with a little poll. So please, for our evaluations, so please participate in that. It helps our programs committee. And one last thing, actually, Liz Sheehan is on this call. She is our current programs chair. She is actually moving to Boise. Oh, there she is. Hi, Liz. And wearing orange, my favorite color. She made it a little easier for me to leave, knowing that she's leaving too. So we're going to stay in touch. But we're happy to announce, really excited to announce, that Carlos and Christine Anderson from Cal State University San Marcos will be our co-chairs. So expect continued amazing programs coming out from NCPC. So thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you all. Have a beautiful day, everyone.